sorry class, I have no idea why it didn't work before, but Ms. Kroll was able to talk me through a fix, so hopefully this one works. If not, I don't know what I'm going to do. All right, today we're going to look at propaganda. You've got your chart and the textbook to help you with that. I gave you samples of what you're going to do for identifying current propaganda trends. So first, let's talk about what exactly is propaganda and how do sociologists investigate it and try to understand it. All right, propaganda is used to try and sway public opinion towards your cause. It has a bad reputation because most people think that propaganda is fake and it's false and it's all lies. And that's not necessarily the case. Right? The goal is to encourage people who are sympathetic to the social movement to join in and become active members. So it might be built on half-truths or a biased slant, but very rarely is it all completely made up fabricated lies. For example, a lot of newspaper sources, news broadcast sources, they tend to use propaganda because of a biased slant in how they present the information. Fox News tends to be very conservative, CNN tends to be very liberal, and so the news stories that they run are built kind of around the framework of trying to sway people towards their original beliefs. The segments they're running, the news that they're running, isn't incorrect, it's just maybe not the full story of what had happened. Different commercials, they want you to buy their product over another product, so they use propaganda to make you think that their product is better than their competition. For example, different phone companies like Sprint or AT&T and Verizon, they always say why their company is better, but in reality, I mean, you could get the same phones with basically the same coverage for all the different companies, and so there's really no benefit of one over the other, just which one you tend to prefer. Right? Different TV shows, they're generated sometimes by social movements to try and sway public opinion. There was a movie that came out a couple years ago with Jake Gyllenhaal called The Day After Tomorrow, where it was raising awareness about all these environmental problems by depicting what the world was going to look like during a Arctic storm, a polar vortex that was happening. Right? It's a biased film, but it was raising awareness towards generating income and interest in environmental preservation. Top Gun, they received a lot of funding and access towards the Air Force in the hopes of people watching this movie will actually enlist and join the military. And so they use propaganda to try and sway public opinion in support of their cause. So we're going to look at the tricks that are published on page 633 in your textbook and address how it's used and how you might be able to recognize it. Why is it not working? All right, there we go. All right, so one of them, a commonly one used during presidential campaigns, political campaigns, is we'll use name calling. I want to tear down my competition, so I call them bad names. I associate them with a negative status and position within society. All right, for example, no one wants to be called a murderer, but people who are talking about the movements of our military during World War II, that's a negative thing we associate with them. So the hope is that it changes your opinion from not sharing secrets, not talking about maybe a husband or boyfriend who enlisted in the military. If I'm running a political campaign, I might say my candidate is soft on crime. During the last presidential election, Trump, he called Hillary Clinton a nasty woman. Clinton called Donald Trump's supporters a basket of deplorables. And so they both use these negative name callings to try and tear down their competition in the hopes of drawing people towards their side because they look better in comparison to this awful group that we're talking about. The other side of name calling is, instead of talking about the bad, is I might use a glittering generality and I talk about the good. Right? I try to associate my group with a general positive that no one really can say bad things about. I'm not giving you solid facts. I'm not giving you evidence of why I'm good. I just present it as a good thing. All right, for example, in this picture here, she's glad he's here, are you? Well, no one really wants a child to get hurt. The bottom where it says freedom matters, well, no one really hates freedom. So these general positive things get associated with your movement in the hopes of drawing people to you. All right. Donald Trump, to get elected, he used glittering generality. His campaign slogan was "Make America great again. Right? Not really saying how it's great, but no one wants their country to be bad, so he's using this general connection. Right? Same thing with President Obama. When he was elected the first time, he ran on this campaign of hope. His face was put in relief with red, white, and blue, associating it with America and how it's being hopeful. No one really hates hope, right? But both candidates, those slogans don't give any solid facts of what they're going to do to try and promote hope or try and make America great. And so they use these glittering generalities to sway public opinion towards their cause. We could also use transfer, right? I associate positive images with my product, with my social movement, in the hopes of gaining your involvement. For example, everyone generally likes Santa. We have positive feelings about Santa. So I want you to transfer those positive feelings of Santa towards my social movement that wants you to buy defense bonds and stamps. All right, we might have beautiful people advertise our product because if you see someone who's attractive, you like them, and therefore you might be likely to buy and purchase that product again because of those positive feelings. We might use humor within our commercials to try and get you to buy our product to join our social movement. All right, both Doritos and Old Spice, they use a lot of these examples within their works to try and sway public opinion. And so if you laughed at the commercial and then you're at the store later on and you see a bag of Doritos, you're much more likely to pick up that bag than any other chip that's out there. And so you try to transfer those positive feelings towards the product, the social movement that you have. Right? We could also use testimonials. I'm going to get a famous person up to talk about my product and why you should like it, my social movement and why you should join it. Right? So, for example, the Got Milk campaign is a long, ongoing testimonial campaign. They have a famous individual with a milk mustache, and at the bottom there's a blurb about how milk helped them become so successful. And so if I want to be a great dancer and singer like Usher, well, maybe I should also drink milk. And so it gets people to buy into that campaign. During presidential elections, they'll have famous individuals, famous musical groups that will come to campaign rallies and talk about the great things that the candidate is doing. And the hope is that if you like that celebrity and you hear that celebrity talk about the candidate, well, I'm also going to support that candidate because my celebrity told me all these great things that they've done. And so testimonials is when people testify the great things that this social movement has done. Another thing we could do is try and make my social movement relatable. It's plain folks. It's like everybody else. It's easy to attain and interact with because it's just a regular guy. Right? For example, Uncle Sam over here, he's not in his tux and top hat anymore. He's in a worker's outfit. He's going to the factory because defending American freedom is everybody's job, and so we all should do it. It's relatable and it's approachable. He looks like any other factory worker. When political candidates go on talk shows, they are talking about themselves in a normal, relatable way, talking about family, friends, and the hope is that you've experienced similar stories to them, and therefore you're more likely to like that candidate because they are approachable. For example, Bill Clinton, before his first election, he went on Arsenio Hall and he played the saxophone for everybody. And so he went on a very popular television show and showed himself wearing sunglasses and playing the saxophone, and people just saw him as a normal guy. A lot of political campaigns, they say, to get your politician elected, they need to be someone that everyone can see themselves having a beer with because we want them to be plain folks. So we might show them with their shirt sleeves rolled up. We might have them without a tie. We see them going to ice cream shops or kissing babies, right? They look just like us, and so we're much more likely to buy into the social movement and get on board with their goals and try to help them. All right, I might also use bandwagoning. You should join my social movement because everybody else is already here and you don't want to be left out. All right, so this one over here for Britain, right? You don't want to be the one man who's absent because as everybody else is going off to war, they're going to come back with stories and details. They're going to take pride in that. But if you're the one person who's left at home, it's going to bring a lot of shame to yourself. And so by seeing the numbers involved, we're going to get on board with this. All right, charity organizations. They'll talk about how many donors that they have, how many people who've come to their aid and how much money that they've raised. And by showing those large quantities, it encourages others to give in to the cause. The reason why marches and protest rallies are so popular is because they give you these great aerial photos of all of the people that showed up in support of this bill that they want to get passed. And so by showing the quantity of numbers that are there, it might influence more people to join it. Some political campaigns, they'll actually pay supporters to show up to these rallies. And so the people there might not fully support the social movement, but by just having bodies in the room, it helps raise the awareness and influence other people to maybe also get involved and also join in. The last one would be card stacking. All right, with this one, you give me half-truths. It's not the full story, but it's part of the story. So there was this old ad campaign between Mac and PC computers, and the Mac was always presented as really cool and relatable and approachable, and it could do all this stuff. And the PC was always presented as kind of old and out of date and stuffy and business oriented. In reality, they both do the same thing. You can get on the internet, you can email people, you can make videos, you can write papers. They support the same software, it just might look a little different. Right? So this commercial was using card stacking. By only talking about the great things of the Mac and ignoring all the good things of a PC, it tried to influence people to buy their product over the other. With different social movements, right? They talk about their plans for the future and why these things will be great. They're not going to talk about the flaws. They're not going to talk about the situations where they know that this is a problem their plan won't be able to fix. But they only talk about the great things. And so by pushing the positive and kind of ignoring the negative things, it sways people to their side because they have solid facts and evidence for why their plan is worthwhile. Right? They might use a straw man argument. What that means is you point out the one strength in your opponent that they have, but it's easily to tear down. It's easy to knock over. And so it's showing, well, yeah, they're trying to say these good things, but look at all these flaws that they have within it. But they don't look at their own plan. The social movement doesn't talk about the flaws in their own goals. By only talking about their good, we can stack the deck with all the good facts on our side. So more people are going to be drawn to our social movement. All right, so that's the fixed lecture. Again, I apologize. I don't know why it didn't work before. Hopefully this one works. If not, I don't know. I might have to cry. All right. I don't want to make this stop. Make it stop.